Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of LFC Transfer Room. I'm Ritchie, and I'll be one of your hosts. And I'm joined today by my co-host and good friend, Kev. How you doing, Kev?
I'm doing really well, mate. I'm really looking. I know I say this at every podcast, but this is a truly special one for me, and something I could spend hours talking to about. But I'll leave that down to you to mention who our great guest is tonight.
Hello, if you're enjoying this podcast, there are some things that you can do to help us out. Leave a review and rate it 5 stars, share it with your friends, and head over to our YouTube channel if you'd like to watch the video version. Now, on with the rest of the podcast.
Do you know what, Kev? I'm going to pass the buck on, actually, and I'm going to say that you should be the one to introduce our guest tonight, because it's such a special guest. And I'm thoroughly excited for it, and I know that you are too. So can you please introduce our guest tonight?
We are truly in legendary talk when I mention this. We are talking to the best 12th man that ever was at Liverpool Football Club, the one and only man who tells of his actual Anfield journey through a book called The LOST SHANKLY BOY, and it's no other than our special guest tonight, which is George Scott. George, how are we?
I'm very well, thanks. Very well, thanks, Kevin. Nice to see both of you. It's a pleasure to be here. Real pleasure.
George, it's an absolute honour, as we said off air as well, to have you here, because you are one of the Shankly boys, and we will get onto all things Bill Shankly in your career as well. But like for Liverpool Football Club, from here and now, for me, and I, at the tender age of 35 years old, we've always been drilled into Bill Shankly made this club, and for me, Bill Shankly made this club. Is that such a true statement for you? Because it always has, like, so resoluted within me. Bill Shankly made this football club.
Well, I think you can. Before Shankly arrived at Liverpool, they'd won 6 trophies. After Shankly arrived at Liverpool, and up till now, they've won 46. So it all started really with Bill Shankly coming from Huddersfield to Liverpool, the same time as I did, the very same month, maybe 6 weeks later. And I knew as soon as I met Bill Shankly, the type of man he was and what he was going to do. He was charismatic. He believed in very simple things. He understood the Liverpool support. He understood what made them tick. He used to say to us, you're coming here to play for these boys that are in the factories and in the working class routes that come here and it's an escape. Don't let them down. Everything he did was built around football. Everything he did was built around Liverpool. Completely dedicated, charismatic. You couldn't take your eyes off him. We were only young lads. I mean, I was only 15 when I came to Anfield. I mean, I left Aberdeen as a boy of 15. And looking back on it now, I've got grandchildren and I've got children. I can't imagine my young grandson going off to Aberdeen on his own to live in digs, to play football for a team that I'd hardly heard of. So, it was a great experience when I came down. I came down initially for a trial, and I met Gordon Wallace, and we played 3 games. We played against Everton at Belfield, played Preston North End, we played, I think it was Bolton Wanderers, and we won all 3 games, and Gordon and I scored in each game. And at the end of the week's trial, Bill Shankly called Gordon in and offered him a contract of, I think it was £7 a week as an apprentice. And Gordon took it and he went back to South Wales where he lived, although he was Scottish. His family came from Glasgow. And I was then called in to see Bill Shankly, and he said to me, he wanted me to sign. He said he'd pay me £7.50 a week. So I got 50 pence more than Wallace, which I still talk to him about today.
I bet you do.
And I said to Bill, I didn't call him Bill, obviously, I was a kid. Mr. Shankly, I said, I don't think I can come to Liverpool. I've provisionally signed for Aberdeen, but I haven't signed for them. But I promised that the manager, Tommy Pearson, his name was, I'm going to sign for him for £6 a week. So it's difficult for me. And also I said to my granny, who was bringing me up along with my granddad, because my dad was killed in a war, and my mother, of course. And I said to her, my granny doesn't even know where Liverpool is, Mr. Shankly. And he said, you tell your granny we're in the 2nd division at the moment, but we'll be in the 1st division next year. I can tell you that. Soon, everybody will know where Liverpool is, son. And those words hit me like a tornado. And I was going nowhere but Liverpool. My mom
I just want to like re-emphasize this. How old were you when you made that decision?
I was 15.
15 years old is absolutely incredible, because I mean, even like me at 15 years old, like 20 years ago, if someone told me to do something, I'd be like, you know, it is such a revolution to do that, and to move, like, I know that it's, you know, within the United Kingdom, but to move from Aberdeen to Liverpool is such a big decision at 15 years old. And Bill Shankly must have played a massive part in that.
Oh, he did. He did. He played the whole part. The thing is, I never knew really much about Liverpool, because I'd been scouted by a lad in Aberdeen who asked me to go to Liverpool for a trial. And although I'd conditionally agreed to sign for Aberdeen, I thought, well, I had nothing to lose. It'd be a nice holiday. I'd never been out of Aberdeen in my life, maybe down to Dundee with my father for some army camp or something. But it was a great adventure, really. And my mum didn't have too much of a problem me going down for the trial. But when I came back and said I was going to sign for them, that was a different story. Because then I was telling my granny, my granddad, and my mum, my dad, my brothers, I was leaving home. And I don't know what it was. I think it was the pool of Shankly, and it was following destiny. But you see, Shankly had signed Dennis Law from Huddersfield. And my idol was Dennis. He was from Aberdeen. I used to watch him driving his red Jaguar around Aberdeen when he signed for Man City for 53,000, I think it was. So I idolised Dennis Law. And when I knew Bill Shankly had signed Dennis, that made me think about going to sign. So that was a little bit in the mix as well, you know. So that's what I did. I told my mum and dad, and I had to fight a bit. But in the end, I said to my mother, look, if you let me go, I'll send you £2 a week, every week, in an envelope, I promise. And I did. For 5 years, I sent her £2 in an envelope. And the reason I did that was because my father was earning £9 a week as a labourer, and he had to feed a family of 3 people and his wife. So I was earning £7.50 a week, which is nearly as much as my dad at the age of 15. So I could afford £2 a week, and I did it religiously. The rest of the money went to a landlady, £3.50 a week for the digs in Anfield Road. 258 Anfield Road is still there, White House opposite the Arkles. And, you know, that left me £2 a week, and Gordon Wallace and Bobby Graham. And that was great. £2 a week. You could have a great time in Liverpool in 1961. The Beatles were playing live in the Cavern in 62. We used to watch Jerry and the Pacemakers, the Beatles. In the afternoon, we'd be training with the first team in the morning. In Melwood, we'd be forking the pitch, painting the stands and all that. Playing 5-a-sides against Shankly, Paisley, Fagan, and Maran every Monday morning in the car park. You know, it was a wonderful life in the Merseyside at that time. So I didn't regret it, but I was very homesick for a while. Maybe 3 or 4 months I was very homesick, but we all were. Bobby, Gordon, Tommy and Chris weren't, because they were home.
Yeah, I can imagine, like, so as everyone knows who listens regularly, I'm a secondary school teacher, and I could not. I think there's a select bunch, I think, who could actually go away as a 15-year-old boy or girl and actually not, you know, I know that Aberdeen and Liverpool are in different countries, but actually change location in that way and go and play football and go and do something. Like you said that you were homesick. I'm pretty sure that there's no 15-year-old in the country who probably wouldn't feel that way.
Yeah, but all the boys did. Yeah, they did. The boys from Scotland did. We were homes, but we were together. So we were a group, a gang. You know, we went to the youth club together. We played in. We even used to play 5-a-sides at Stanley Park against the English lads. If Shankly knew, he would have hammered us. You know, but you know, it became quite an adventure. But the bottom line was football. That was it. We knew where our destiny lay. We wanted to go up that football ladder. So we weren't happy with playing in the C team. We wanted to play in the B team. And then in the A team, and then in the reserves. But that takes time. We had to serve 2 years as an apprentice. So you signed at 15. On your 17th birthday, Shankly called you in, and he told you you were either going to be a full-time professional or you were being released. And quite a few of the lads were coming out in tears, and they were 17. They got no education. They left school at 15. They had to find another football club or a job. So it was a ruthless business even then. And it's still the same today, in a way. Because they're bringing children to Kirby at 9 years of age, and they get to 12, 13, and everybody at school thinks they're heroes, and they are heroes. And then suddenly somebody says, "So sorry, son, you're not going to make it." It's a terrible thing if your life is football and you're dedicated to being a professional. So, you know, that side is still similar now, but it was a bit different. We were at least 17, more mature than being released at 12 or 13.
Yeah. I mean, like, I actually work for a feeder school for a professional football team that I won't divulge into further, but we have to provide an education, and then up until 18 years old, and then they get to know whether or not they get the football scholarship / apprenticeship. But we now do provide education. So like, even if they don't get the GCSEs at, 16 years old, they continue to do that, because football scholarships now are seen as apprenticeships, which is the way that education should go.
Yeah.
Something that you said though, George, which and Kev, like I promise you, like, chip in whenever possible, because something that you said, George, was so important, is you might not know who Liverpool are now, but you will know who they are soon. That was Shankly's era. That was like Shankly's whole like mantra, is that, okay, we might be in the second division, but I tell you what, every single person in the world will know who Liverpool Football Club is. And that was Shankly's belief. And every book that I've read, and every book that any Liverpool fan have read, Shankly believed 100% that Liverpool will be the best club in the planet, on the map.
Well, he told me and my father.
And he did that.
He brought my dad down, Kevin. Ritchie. He brought my dad down, and we were standing in the centre circle, my stepfather. And he said to him, "Look around, Mr. Scott." His name wasn't Mr. Scott because he was my stepfather. He said, "Look around, Mr. Scott," he said. "This place is going to be a bastion of invincibility. They'll come here and be beaten, I promise you. They'll come here and be beaten. You're a very lucky boy, George." And that was what he said in the centre circle at Anfield, in 1960, 61. And he's right, they do all still come here to be beaten to this day. Very few leave Anfield with 2 points, 3 points.
George, he believed it from day one, didn't he? Like, believed it from day one. Liverpool would be this establishment and will be one of the best amongst the world. Kev?
Absolutely.
George, I think when you joined Liverpool in 1960, I think we need to set the landscape out for our listeners, because some of them don't know anything prior to 1992. But you're talking at a parody world, because you've got Spurs who are about to win the double. You've got Everton, who was one of the best teams in the city, and that's hard to believe now.
Yeah.
But they were about to have the Holy Trinity, the School of Science, what the club was based on in midfield. And whilst Liverpool were relegated 6 years prior and had just appointed the new manager, Bill Shankly, who was recommended by, as you said to me before, we already knew, ex-Liverpool captain Matt Busby, who recommended them to the club. When you step foot into Anfield, did the club feel and look as a mediocre team? And how dilapidated was the stadium? Because we look at the stadium now, it's in fine prowess and it looks the way it should be. But there was a starting of that. Do you know what I mean? And did you get that sense when when you walked in that I don't see this happening quite soon?
No. In fact, Aberdeen had a better stadium. I mean, Anfield, in my book, there's a chapter at the start where I describe Anfield, going into Anfield, walking through the players' entrance, going into the boot room, describing where the doors are, where the Shanks' office was, up to the canteen, the director's room, the pitch, the big mast above the main, what is now the main stand, the boys' pen, and the Kemlin Road stand with the red barriers all over it, and the Kop, which was massive still. A standing room only, of course. And when I saw a match, when I saw the first match and looked at the Kop and seen it swaying like an ocean wave, and the crowd, I mean, that was a different thing. But the pitch was not like it is today. Today it's a bowling green. Today they're playing carpet slippers. They've got like a little light ball, And that pitch at Anfield, after about 2 months of the season, was mud in the middle. The wings were still nice. Goalmouths were mud. And it was a bit dilapidated. The dressing rooms were a bit dilapidated. The home dressing room was bigger than the away dressing room. I think that was psychology. But, it was, and the treatment room was quite a little bit ahead of its time once Shankly took over. Got some professional machines and new machines. But the boot room was like, I would say the front room of an Anfield terrace house. It wasn't big, but it had baskets with kit in it and had boots hanging up on the wall. And we had to clean the boots. I used to clean Roger Hunt's boots, because he was in my position, if you like. And then when you get to 17, the apprentices started to clean my boots. So it was progressive. But it was, Joe Fagan and Ruben and Bob, they were all unbelievable people. Every one of them. Ruben was like a sergeant major, he kept everybody in control. And Joe was a bit quieter, and Bob was he was fantastic on tactics and brilliant in physiotherapy. And Shankly was just like, the master. He was a leader. He was, and they created the shooting boards. And then
sweatbox.
The sweatbox. It started to bring in technological improvements and training and all that, and it slowly developed. And of course, then the big thing was getting money to sign Ian St. John and to sign Ron Yates, because those two guys really, more than anybody, were responsible for the transition.
Just on those two, George, I'm sorry, but how did he sell Liverpool to a second division team and get them to play in the second division? And you see the likes of Ian St. John and Ron Yates. That must have been some story he must have told them.
Well, of course, when he signed St. John, they got into the first division.
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah.
They got into the first division in 62. So Ian and Ronnie came to a first division side on the up. And what Shankly believed in, it's a bit like Jurgen, I think. Because Jurgen Klopp, to me, is a mirror image of Shankly. The accent's different, obviously. But his views on everything, politics, the crowd, Liverpool as a city, passion. And he's done what Shankly did. He's turned a mediocre team into worldwide winners again. So, Shankly he used to do what he called the crucifix method. Goalkeeper, centre-half, centre-forward, two wingers. And the two wingers were Callaghan and Thompson. And Peter was my best friend. I was in digs with him for 3 years. And Callie was unbelievable. Nobody will ever beat his record, 850 games or something. It's only 850 more than me. And, they had St. John, who was brilliant. And, you can compare some of these players. I think Firmino was a bit like St. John. Mane was a bit like Roger Hunt. And there's a lot of comparisons. Goalkeeper, Tommy Lawrence was brilliant. We've always had good goalkeepers since Tommy, with Ray Clements and Robillard, through to the best goalkeeper in the world now, Ali. So it was a dilapidated place, to answer your question. It wasn't like it is today.
It's not, but I appreciate the similarities as well, because Jurgen is a personable manager, and that is exactly what Bill Shankly was, and he started that socialism machine. I think that we all, as Liverpool fans, absolutely buy into and embody, because I know you don't want to mix sports with politics, but actually, if you're a Liverpool fan, you do. You absolutely buy into all of the philosophies that Liverpool stand for. I mean, did you think in your first 4 seasons at the club, would they be promoted, league champions, FA Cup winners, semi-finals of the European Cup? Because that's what Shankly did.
Yeah, he did. I don't think we thought that way. We went to training every day. We did what we were told. We followed the instructions, and things developed. I went from to the C team, to the B team, the A team, then I went into the reserves. But once you went into the reserves, you're playing in the big stadiums. In those days, we were in the Central League. And the Central League composed of most of the major first division teams in the north of England, in the Midlands. At Wolverhampton, Newcastle, Birmingham, Man United, Man City. We used to play there every week, because when the first team were at Anfield, we were at Old Trafford. And when they were at Old Trafford, we were at Anfield. So I'd come back from a reserve game at Old Trafford to meet Peter Thompson, who'd be playing at Anfield. We'd go downtown the Royal Tiger for a few drinks and out with the boys, mixed with the Everton players, Roy Vernon, Alex Scott. People used to think he was my brother. He wasn't. He was completely different from me. And Dennis Stevens, Brian LeBone, all those guys, we all mixed together in the night time, but we were big enemies, even in the reserve team. I mean, I played a few times against Everton reserves, and I scored most times I played against them. And I used to play against Colin Harvey and those sort of guys, and it was always a pleasure to beat them. Reserves, first team, A team, B team, whatever. And Shankly thought that way as well. It was all big games against Everton, whatever league you were playing in, he was just unbelievable, really. And in many ways, the rest of my life was mirrored on what Bill Shankly taught me.
Yeah, and Shankly, I think, summed it up really. There's only 2 teams in Liverpool, and that's Liverpool first team and Liverpool reserve team. And that very, 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 very famous quote. So, like I've said to you before, and everyone else who follows the podcast, I do work very closely with a football team who have lots and lots of apprenticeships and scholarships. That's moving on, and that's like my role in education. But could you give us maybe? We'll not be going back a few years here, George, but maybe could you give us a day in the life in apprenticeship at Liverpool? You know, what was it like to be an actual apprentice at Liverpool Football Club? And I'm sure that all of our young listeners now will be horrified because it's perhaps nowhere near what they could imagine as, you know, their life as apprentices.
Well, there'd be about 8 of us, I think, really. There was Bobby Graham, Gordon Wallace, Phil Tinney, Tommy Smith, Chris Lawler, and a couple of other, Grant McCulloch. Those guys I've given mention in the book as well. You know, they're all good, they're all great players. Very few of them made the first team. Gordon Wallace even only played 15 games, I think. But he made his mark in history by scoring the first goal for Liverpool ever in the European Cup. And the first goal, and 2 goals on match of the day, the first match of the day. And he would have been he was a wonderful player, but he would have been a superstar, but for injuries. And Gordon and I are still great friends today. We play golf together. We see each other regularly. Him and his wife, me and my wife, you know, we've been friends now 63 years. And fortunately, we're both in good health. Bobby Graham was a fantastic player as well. And Bobby did break through. It took him a while. He didn't get really into the team until the late 70s properly. You know, a couple of seasons, and he was off to Coventry. But as an apprentice, we used to come into the ground and we would go on the coach at 9:30 with the first team, everybody, all the players, down to Melwood, around Queen's Drive, past the girls' school, Holly Lodge, all the girls on the wall waving as we went past. Get down to Melwood. And bear in mind, Melwood wasn't what it is today. I know they've gone to Kirby, but before they went to Kirby, I went to Melwood. Peter Moore invited Gordon Wallace and I down there. And I was staggered because I hadn't been back for quite a number of years. And I remember Melwood as a cricket hut. It was a cricket pavilion with steps coming down. There were 3 pitches. One pitch Shankly loved, and he treated it like a baby. And it was like Wembley. And I remember he put a message on the dressing room wall in Melwood once. In future, only players with 5 caps allowed on the big pitch. It was rubbish, of course, but it was just to get a laugh. The other pitches weren't quite as good. And then he built the shooting boards down. So I remember Melwood with the shooting boards in the far corner, another session of shooting boards alongside. And then they used to have the 3 pitches. And the training was very sophisticated by those standards. We'd have circuit training. One group would go around the pitch while another group did weights and step-ups, and another group would be doing something else. So it was all varied and a lot of 5-a-sides, a lot of ball work. You love ball work, you know, playing with the ball, moving around, playing 5-a-sides. And the shooting boards were brilliant because you got stuck in the middle and Joe Fagan would have a stopwatch and the ground would get a bit churned up and you'd have to stay in there for 2 minutes, hit the ball against the board and back, control it, keep it, and he'd shout at you. And then you'd be absolutely knackered by the time you finished. And then somebody else would go in. And then when you finished that, you'd have a little rest and go on the big shooting boards. And what that was the goalkeeper, Tommy Lawrence, would be in goals, or Bet Slater, and then Jimmy Farnell later. And the first team would line up, and Ruben Bennett would put the ball in, and they come out one by one, control the ball, and have a shot at the goal. And if the ball beat the keeper, it bounced back off the board, and they'd batter it again. And the keeper tried to save it again. And then next guy would come in, and Lexus St. John might try and dribble around the keeper. You know, and then after they'd finished, the reserves would come on, do the same thing, then the little apprentices. So it was, and then when training was finished, we'd all go back on the coach, back up to Anfield, and we'd jump in the big bath. There was a big communal bath. Can you imagine that today? You know, no showers. And we'd all get dressed, go upstairs to the canteen. You called it the canteen. It wasn't a restaurant. And Shankly would be sat in the corner with a little silver teapot. God knows what was in it. It was some concoction because you didn't drink anything other than this stuff that was in this pot, some green tea or something. And he'd have the reporters with him and you could hear him, you know, gesticulating to the reporters. And then when we finished that, we had to do our chores then. We had to go and paint. And on Monday morning, for example, we had to sweep all the rubbish off the cop. We had to get out with the brushes and sweep all the detritus off the cop. Can you imagine? And in the off season, in the close season, we'd have to paint the turnstiles and up and paint the cotton, do all this, fork the pit. I've got a lovely photograph I put on Facebook. Me and Bobby Graham and Gordon Wallace forking the pitch just in front of the main stand in 1960. And Arthur Riley, the famous groundsman, Arthur's behind us and he's shouting, stop messing around, get on with the job, So yeah, and that sort of, and then next morning you'd be back training again, and then on the Friday the teams would go up in the dressing room. First team would go up in the reserves together, so you can run in and see, and then the A team and the B team. So it was everybody was on edge on a Friday because that's when the team was put up. Bear in mind, as Kev said, there's no substitutes. All it was 1 to 11, and number 12 was the bag carrier. He was a 12th man. And I remember going with the first team to Leicester City as 12th man. And we got to the Lim Hotel where we stopped for lunch. And Roger Hunt fell sick. And I thought I was going to be on at Filbert Street. And by the time we got to Filbert Street, he'd recovered. Shankly was pleased. I wasn't. But anyway, I didn't get a chance. Otherwise, I would have been on. See, that was how fine margins things are, You could have got on a couple of goals and away you go.
Yeah, go on. I was just going to say there's an absolutely amazing documentary about the Liverpool way, and I can't remember if it's on Netflix or Amazon Prime, but you guys can find out obviously for yourselves. And when you were saying about the boards, like smashing against like the balls against the boards, there is Bill Shankly there, and it's the Liverpool. I think it's called the Liverpool way, and you have literally a grid. So you have like a top board,
that's it,
a left, a right, and a bottom board, and you would literally just be smashing the balls against the board. And George, you were probably part of that as well. When I was just watching it, I was like, it turned into obviously the middle part because everyone's standing in that middle part is an absolute mud bath. Like your legs must have been so heavy smashing the balls against those boards because you look at it and you just think, how on earth are they even kicking? Like, bearing in mind, like we're talking about pure mud with heavy boots, with heavy footballs, smashing the balls against the boards and walloping them as hard as you can. That was pure like leg muscle work, and like you've said, that's where the power comes from because I just recall watching it and thinking, gosh, that's a workout in itself.
And especially at the start of a new season, because a lot of the guys would come back a little bit unfit. Don't forget, in those days, it wasn't like now. I mean, they'd have a few drinks and, go on holiday and come back like Sir Tommy Smith and Big Ronnie. They'd be a bit overweight, have a big plastic stuff over them. It was that's why it had to be tough. I've seen people vomiting, it was so tough. But once you got fit, like being in the army, once you've got fit, once you got your muscle stuff, then you're in heaven because you're really fit. That was Liverpool's secret, I think, as we went into 64 and 65. It became a really fit team, high press, a bit like Jurgen's team have been, and are currently becoming again. Yeah. The high press, I mean, Shankly was always very adamant that if you lost the ball, get it back. And I used to say things like, the ball never gets tired, son. Move it around. All these little statements. It was wonderful stuff.
Well, all I was going to mention about like the boards and like obviously part of that was the sweatbox. When you're obviously, because I've read your book, you're there watching the likes of Ian St. John and Roger Hunt taking these shots against like Tommy Lawrence and the other keepers. Is it then where you notice the intricacies of how they are hitting the ball, how they're hitting it, and the differences that did you try and imitate any of them when you were in there, or is there or did you have your own way of doing it?
I think everybody's got their own way, but like in any job, if you've got somebody who's bigger than you, better than you, further advanced than you, you learn from them. Because that's what it's all about, isn't it? We were only 16. These guys were like 20, 21, maybe 22, coming into the good years, and they were experienced pros, internationals. They were all internationals, every one of them. So we were just guys on the way up, trying to be like them. But no, we were all skillful players. We were all great players. I mean, we wouldn't have been at Anfield if we weren't. Shankly really made sure of that. But they were special players, very special players. I mean, even Peter Thompson, he's a magician. On the wing. I mean, he used to turn people, a bit like Salah, turn people inside out. And Cali was just Cali. I mean, he used to go past the wing and cross it, past the wing and cross it. And, Shankly used to say to people if they were left out of the team and they were moaning at him, he'd say, do you want to know why you're left out of the team? Ask Ian Callaghan. He's never left out of the team because he never has a bad game, son.
And that's like that. It just rings true though for modern football now. Like if you're left out of the team, it's because the person who's taking your place is doing better. So you do better, and then you get
Yeah.
back in the team, you know, and
Of course.
that, you know, that's what society really should be as well. I mean, again, being fairly cynical, I don't know, but do better then, like try harder and like improve yourself, and don't look
The
upon
tragedy,
yourself
the,
as if
tra-
like you're
the tragedy, tragedy for us, all us lads, was that there were no substitutes. Because today you've got 5 or 6
absolutely.
substitutes. We would have all been in the first team. Without any doubt, we'd have had loads of games, League Cup, FA Cup. But because there was no substitutes and they had such a good team, it was 2-3-5. 2 full-backs, 3 half-backs, were centre half, 2 right half, left half, and 5 forwards. That was, everybody played that until much later when 4-2-4 and stuff came in. But at that time, you look at Callaghan, Hodgson, John Smith and Thompson. I mean, nobody was going to get them out of the team. And if one of them got injured, Jeff Strong would go in because he came from Arsenal for about 40 grand. So, and then, you know, Chisnell came and somebody always seemed to be just blocking your way in, you know. You just had to keep trying to batter the wall down.
You talk like, though, like, although the rivalry aside, like there is a massive sense of a family environment around the team, and especially from your book. You know, we're talking about rivals trying to break into the team, but the respect amongst that group, that must have been down to Shankly, because same as what we see with Jurgen. And again, I don't want to point, because we never do it this podcast. We never point fingers at other clubs. There is a healthy build in Liverpool Football Club, even right now. And I do think that that's always linked down to Shankly. And if you don't like it, there's the door. However, do not complain to the media. Don't say this isn't working out right now. You go and earn your stripes. And I think that always came from Shankly, because there's such a massive respect that's been built within the club. Even now with Jurgen Klopp, you never hear anybody about being unhappy because they're not earning their stripes or they've not had a chance. Because if you want that chance, you go out and earn it. And that's not really resonant in other football clubs. And I'm talking about big football clubs, without naming any names. That comes down to Shankly, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, what you see with Shankly and what you see with Klopp is what you get. Shankly was no different in public than he was in private, I can tell you. He didn't put an act on when he was in private. That's what he was like. And it strikes me Jurgen's the same. I've never met Jurgen. I'm so sorry to say. I'd love to meet him. I'd love him to read the book, actually, because it would give him an insight into how things were with Shankly. But, you know, he's a fantastic manager. What he's done for this club is incredible. And I'm sure he's modelled a lot of it on Shankly, because I know I've been in his office. When I went to Melwood, I went into his office and I'd look round. He wasn't there, like, and Shankly's photograph's right up there behind his desk. So he knows what Shankly meant to the club. And you're right what you say about the camaraderie in the team and all that. Because, you know, Shankly used to say things to us like, you know, natural enthusiasm, son, greatest thing in the world. Without it, you're nothing. And he used to say, nothing happens unless you make it happen, son. And it's all very true. You sit in your backside, nothing will ever happen. But if you make it happen, it happens. And that was his ethos. And I think it's Jurgen's ethos as well, from what I've seen.
Definitely. Absolutely. But even with the apprentices as well, reading your book, it's, you know, the camaraderie between all of you, even though they're your rivals. You know, you spent 3 years with Peter Thompson, yet he's the one who's preventing you from getting into that starting 11. But your actual, you can tell that there's a kind of a camaraderie between all the players.
Yeah,
regardless of, there was no sense of, well, I'm in the starting 11, you're not. It was a base of, well, you should be getting a chance, you should be getting your opportunities.
Yeah, Peter always encouraged me when I came back from, say, playing in Newcastle or somewhere. How did it go, son? You scored. Oh, brilliant! You know, there was never any, you know, oh, he's trying to get my place. I would have been after his place anyway, because I wasn't a left winger. I'd have been after Roger Hunt. That's a bit of a hard ass World Cup winner.
just while we're talking about the players, did you get to see? I know he was 38 at the time, but what was Billy Liddell like? The Liverpool
I did get to see. Billy was a wonderful man. He was an educated man, and he was an absolute legend. I mean, as you know, people called him Liverpool. Yeah, one-man team at one time. Shankly called him a living legend. And Billy, I remember, it's in my book as well. I remember I scored a header from a cross by Billy Liddell, but it wasn't in a match. Yeah. In Melwood, you know, I was warming up, and Billy was watching us. he had his overcoat on, I remember, and the ball was up, came out to the wing, and he just booted it over. It came over, and I went woof into the net. Header from Billy Liddell's cross. How many people can say that? Yeah, that's alive today. Yeah, but I mean, no, he was fabulous. But see, that was a different age again, the 50s. And a lot of these boys that have got dementia now has come from the 50s, not so much from the 60s, I don't think. Although obviously a lot of our boys did. But heavy ball then, you see, it wasn't a heavy ball for us. The ball suddenly changed in 62. It suddenly became more like water absorbent. There was no lace. They took the lace away and put the, a little round thing in, and playing in the wet, the water would run off it. And then the floodlights came in. Floodlights came in about 61, 62, didn't it? And then played in the white ball for the first time, because up till then it was always an orange ball. Like in the World Cup final was an orange ball. England beat Germany.
Yeah.
I got married that day, by the way.
I know you did.
I'm Scottish.
And I believe you heard the cheer as well, and it wasn't what you thought, was it?
No, that was my Uncle Pat cheering the German equaliser.
Yeah, that's it.
This is my wife said I do. No, I mean, Peter Thompson was at my wedding. Now, he should have been at Wembley, because Alf Ramsey left him out in the final a lot because he didn't want to play with the wingers. Alan Ball played in the right wing, and he only had like a different formation. Ian Callaghan didn't play either. Played 1 or 2 games at the start, but he didn't play as it went on towards the final. So Peter was at my wedding, yeah.
That's incredible. That literally is incredible. So we're talking about like football fans, and we already have made those allusions to Klopp as well. But I think Pep Guardiola needs a mention in football, modern football management, because him and Jurgen, with their style of play, are phenomenal. And there are comparisons always to be made with what Shankly did, as in playing actual football. And I think that even Pep and Jurgen would perhaps, credit Shankly with that and say that Bill Shankly played a massive part in them. I mean, how much similarity are there to teams today, even looking back in the Shankly era? How many comparisons are there now to compare to what Bill Shankly played? Because for me, like looking back, and I obviously wasn't involved in Bill Shankly's era, for me, I can see comparisons the whole way through. I mean, is that right for every football fan to try to?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, I think it is, because he always taught us to play in little triangles. The ball would go from the goalkeeper. Okay, in those days, most of the goalkeepers bounced it a few times and kicked it down the middle. And the big centre forward jumped up and tried to jump the centre half and nod it on. But Shankly started to get. I mean, Tommy became the first sweeper keeper. They coming out with the ball. And he used to like to play in little triangles. Tommy Smith to Gordon Milne, back to Tommy, to Billy Stevenson, back to Tommy, long ball to the wing, to Peter. Now it's the same. Now you see Trent will bang a long ball out to the far side. And Shankly was a great believer, like I said earlier, in an early edition of the high press. Like get the ball back, worry them, harass them. Don't lose the ball. Don't give it away. Play the simple ball and play it well. And if you lose it, get it back. That was his ethos in terms of his tactics, And, I mean, he used to say, leave the goals to the geniuses, the boys in the box. He used to talk about Maradona and those people, Say, these are the guys, the tricky boys, like Salah today. Most players in the team play the ball simple, keep possession, don't give it away, build up patterns. And you see that happening today. Now Liverpool do it really well. And eventually it goes to Salah, bang, 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 and it's in. And that was the same with Liverpool at the time. They used to play in little triangles, and then once they get to the point where they release the long ball with the other wing, and they start again. And then the guys up front, and later on it became Rushy and Owen and Fowler, all these guys with the skills in the box. He used to say, let them do the work in the box. You guys, he used to say, didn't he? A football team is like a piano. You got 3 guys to play, and the rest carry it.
And you know what, like you even look at Jurgen Klopp and he built that. But before that, you mentioned the big striker, little striker, and that reminds me of Gerard Houllier, Heskey and Owen. And you've just mentioned Michael Owen. Heskey, nod it on to Owen, done. Owen put it in the back of the net. But again, like, yes, you have the magicians there, but you need a workhorse
Yeah.
literally like a workhorse 7, so that those 4 can then flourish. You know, whoever's left can then flourish. And you look at Man Cities of nowadays, and Barcelona's gone by, and Liverpool's, and all of the great teams in Europe, they have that workhorse around them. And Jurgen, I think you just have to look at his Dortmund team, his Liverpool 1.0, which we call it, with Genie and Hendo and Fab. They are actual workhorses, and you would go to Anfield, and I'm not as fortunate as Kev, who goes in, week out. Like Kev will tell you better than what I can. There's nothing worse than not just the Liverpool player losing the ball, but a Liverpool player not tracking back. Kev, it doesn't happen, does it? Yeah. Like in Liverpool, it doesn't happen. They track back all the time because, fine, you will lose a ball. Like Robbo, Trent, Zobbo, whoever will lose a ball. That's not the crime. The crime is not tracking back. And you can go to any other stadium around the world, and that might be accepted, but it's not at Anfield.
No, it's not accepted at Anfield at all. No way. Never, not by Bobby Paisley, not by Shankly, and certainly not by Jurgen. I mean, it's amazing how football's developed. I'd love to play today. I really would. I'd have a ball today. I'd have a lot of first team games today because I was quick, tricky, fast. When I went to South Africa, I would say I was a big star over there, really. I was the second top scorer in the country. And we used to get 20,000 every game, and we travelled to Durban, Joburg, Cape Town. And we had some great players. Kevin Lewis played for Liverpool the day they got promoted. Terry Mancini played for Arsenal, QPR. And we had an all-British team, and we were a great team at Port Elizabeth. Only were there for 2 years. It was a great 2 years, and it resurrected my football career after what happened at Aberdeen, which was a bit of a disaster for me, really, because it was my life's ambition to play for Aberdeen. And I got my debut, and I scored in my debut and started off like a house on fire. And then I got a serious injury. She put me out of the game for the rest of the season, virtually forced me to work in a factory down in Liverpool and try to get fit again. And then Shankly came to my rescue and got me fixed up with the team in South Africa through Cliff Lloyd. And I never looked back. And then, of course, when I came back from South Africa, he got me fixed up again with Tranmere. He's never left me. He was always there, like a father figure, really.
Yeah.
So grateful for what he did for me.
Going back to your time at Liverpool, the famous games that we hear with Shankly and his coaches against, the apprentices and the 11, were they just as competitive as what they sound in your book? Because they sounded as though, and was Shankly's team always the five referees? Yeah.
They were. They were cheats. Because
I didn't want to say that, but if you want to say that, George, that's fine.
No, I couldn't have said it then, what about the door. But they were cheats. I mean, Bob Paisley used to occasionally he'd stop and he'd limp for about 5-10 seconds. He'd stop and he'd put his cartilage back in himself. He'd put it back in and carry on playing. Unbelievable. And the five-a-sides I'm talking about, yeah. I mean, it was 2 types of five-a-sides. Well, 3 really. We played at Melwood, but we often played in the not in the Cop end, but the Anfield Road end, penalty box. 2 jackets at one end and 2 jackets at the other. Or we played in the car park, outside in the car park, And you often get Shankly come on to Tannoy on a Monday, Scott Wallace, Tinney, Smith to the car park. Five-a-side start in 10 minutes. This is about 1 o'clock after we've come back from training. And we go out there and be Bob and Joe and Ruben playing against us. And the last 20 minutes or so, And it was just lessons we were getting learned, because what they used to do, they used to shield the ball, stick the backsides out, keep you away from it. And we'd be running around like tigers, And it was that famous story. I'm sure you've heard the story with Chris Lawler. I mean, when we're playing five-a-sides.
Yeah.
And it's true, I was there that day. And he gets injured. And he's off standing by the turnstile in the car park. And Shankly can see his opportunity, so he pulls us back towards, and he chips over our heads, and the ball goes over this gym shoe. It was down for the goal. And Smithy says, "No, I wasn't a goal, boss." And Shank says, "Yeah, I was a goal, son. I'm the manager. It's a goal. Come on, shower. Time up. 1-0. And Tommy kept on going. No, you've told us not to cheat. You're cheating yourself. No. Look, we'll ask Chris. Chris is an honest boy. Chris, was that a goal, son? And Chris said, "No, I was right behind it." And Shank says to Paisley, "We waited a year for the boy to speak, and his first words are bloody lie." Because Chris was very quiet. We called him the silent night. Right, some player. 7 seasons, 7 years. He missed 2 games or something. And he comes out of the dressing room, and Shankly sees him and says to Joe Fagan, "There's that Malinga Lola." He didn't like it when you were injured.
No, I tell you,
No.
that's it. Your last season at Liverpool, you nearly go away for pre-season with the main 11 to North America. How close was you going on that tour? As you've been given the reading your book, and some people may have not have done, but to give a context, you get rigged out, you get your touring jacket and stuff like that, and then how did you find out how the games went? And if you could give us the scoreline of one of them, I don't know, we alluded to it earlier, but if you could just give us a sense. I felt for you when I read, because the football gods, I seem to think at that moment were just against you to some degree, if there is football gods. But if you could just enlighten our listeners to that lovely, heart-wrenching story. But I did actually feel for you that minute, George, because I just felt, oh my God, what does this lad have to do?
Yeah, well, as I said, that season was 1963, and I was leading goal scorer in the Central League team, and the tour was coming up. It was a 6-week tour in America. And then on that tour, they were on the Ed Sullivan Show and all sorts of things. They played about 8 or 9, 10 games. One was against San Francisco Chargers or something. Can't remember the name of the team. And they won 14-0. And I guarantee you, I just scored a few goals. Anyway, Alfie Addismith, he took the mantle. He scored 6 in that game. But what happened was Bob Paisley called me into the dressing room, and he gave me I got an injection, a number of injections. He gave me a nice leather bag with Liverpool FC United States Tour 1963. I got a beautiful suit, and you often see Shankly with that suit on, in photographs.
Yeah.
With a lovely gold embossed badge on it and everything. Gordon Wallace got his suit. Bobby Graham got his suit. Smitty got his suit. Chris Lawler got his suit. And then I think it was a week before the tour. I see in the papers, Liverpool bid £30,000 for Phil Chisnell, and it came to pass to sign Phil Chisnell. I did have an injury, to be honest, but I was okay. I mean, you could have used that as I'd gone over my ankle, but I would soon get over that. He pulled me in office, and he said to me, he said, "Son, I'm sorry." He said, "I've just paid a lot of money for Chisnell." He said, "We're going to have to take him, and there's only, I can't remember, it's 20 places on a tour. I'm sorry, son, you're going to have to miss out. But the good news is you go back to Aberdeen, get yourself fit, because next season's a big season for you." They try to build me up, So, and I went back to Aberdeen with my suit. And then eventually, as time went on, as I said, I went to South Africa. 2 great years in South Africa. And when I came back, I went up to Aberdeen. I said to my mum, "Where's me Liverpool suit?" "Oh," she gave it Salvation Army. I never even got the suit. She thought she was doing somebody a good turn. A Liverpool players with a boss badge, God knows what it'd be worth now. Anyway,
someone from the Sally Army's absolutely chipped in there, isn't they? So
at
least you've done them a good turn.
Cause.
Yeah, you've done them a good turn there. Listen, we will get into a couple of Shankly quotes there, because he's always had a way with words. But is there anything that stayed with you through your life more than any of the words that Shankly said, and how has that helped you in your business life too?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's 2 really. Those 2 I mentioned before. I have to say, natural enthusiasm, the greatest thing in the world, son. Without it, you're nothing. That was very profound. And the other one was what I said before as well, that you get nothing for sitting still. Nothing happens unless you make it happen. And that took me through my sales career, my sales management career, tremendously. And he gave me a reference. I mean, he gave me a reference in 1966.
That's some reference, that, George. I'm sorry to interrupt, but that is
some
reference.
You still got it.
It is, yeah, I've got it. In fact, I've got it here somewhere. I could show you. It's in a frame. But it was wonderful how he did it. I mean, he did that actually not when I left It wasn't when I left Liverpool. It was when I left Aberdeen, because it was 66. It was a year after, and I went to see him before I went to South Africa to thank him for talking to Cliff Loud about me. I had a nice long half an hour with him. And as I left, he stopped me. He says, "Stand here, son." And he gets his typewriter out. He's typing away. And he said, "Yeah, that'll do you no harm, George. You've earned it." And I looked at it. Oh, I couldn't believe it, because he signed a W Shankly, which he doesn't normally sign. He uses. I've got a few letters from him, and so was Bill, or Bill Shankly.
Yeah.
He sent me one in South Africa, and the final paragraph in it says, "We're still winning the five-a-side, son. How could we lose? We got 5 referees in the team." No, I've got that as well. He sent it to me in South Africa.
But like,
so those are the two quotes. There were many, of course, but those were the two. I think that as also it's the one about the socialism I believe in is working together for the greater good. It's nothing to do with politics. Although I've got a shirt with that in the front. I wore it to the cup final in
last podcast.
The Gerrard final.
Yeah, I've got one with socialism. It's a way of life. It's a way of it's the way I see football. Yeah. I've got that on a shirt myself. So it's nice to have that kind of reminiscence of.
And the one he said about the bin man. Can't remember it all now, but you know.
Oh yeah. You'd be the best bin man.
Why are you riding the bin man? You know, the bin man's the most important man in the city of Liverpool. You'd have if I was a bin man, you'd have the cleanest city in the world. You know.
Yeah. I'd be the best bin man in the country. The other one about Afro-British, I just call him a greedy man.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Don't you find that, like, all of the years that have gone past, all of these values still stay with Liverpool Football Club? Like, for me, Shankly built Liverpool Football Club. I know you can look at Paisley and Fagan and everyone else who came afterwards, and you know it is such a socialism club. And in the life of Twitter nowadays, you can say, yeah, you can't support Liverpool if you're not a socialist. Fair enough, because that is what built Liverpool Football Club. But Shankly's words surely has to resonate between life and reality, because one of my most favourite Shankly quotes is the socialism quote, and you know that I think will always stand the test of time too. And the fact that Jurgen echoed those quotes, almost like the past resonates and the past harmonizes within itself. And Jurgen is that harmonization of Bill Shankly, and that's why he is so special and so many people love him. Bill Shankly once said, "My idea was to build Liverpool into a bastion of invincibility." You know, Napoleon had that idea and he conquered the bloody world.
Yeah, I can hear him saying that. I can hear it in my mind. Hear him saying it. Yeah. I mean, at the moment as well, what mirrors it also is that Jurgen is building a new team from a great team, and Shankly built a new team from a great team. Shankly knew the time when it was coming to an end was in 1970-71. When and then he brought Keegan and he brought John Toshak and those guys, and he had to let Ian St. John down gently. He had to let Rod John down. Peter, he drifted them all away because he's very loyal, and he stayed loyal to them a little bit too long, probably, because they lost to Watford in the FA Cup, and I think that was the catalyst to break that team up. And then he built a new team. And if you look at what clubs do now, we've lost Firmino, we've lost Mane, we've lost Henderson, we've lost a lot of players, and he's built now. Looking like a very class midfield to me, with Szoboszlai and McAllister and Curtis and the others that are coming through there, you know, Gavin Birch. And I think we were on the up again. And he said a quote the other day, I think I read, that this is my new team. I'm not worried about 7 years. I'm starting from now, which was great to hear, because he's still got another 2 years of his contract, and hope he fulfills that.
Hopefully it extends, because obviously Nagelsmann now is going to be the new German manager, and I can't see Jurgen going anywhere apart from the German national team personally. But you know that is, you know, by the by, and it's a separate issue. But for me, Jurgen resonates everything that Bill Shankly did, and I hope we are so lucky to have him, because like he was made for Liverpool, and Liverpool was made for Jurgen Klopp, much like Bill Shankly was made for Liverpool, and Liverpool was made for Bill Shankly. You know, so. There's, like I said, the past harmonizes with itself. And
he said that, didn't he? He said that I was made for Liverpool and Liverpool was made for me.
Yeah,
came out of his mouth, and he was true, very true.
George,
Absolutely.
just talking about like your last meeting, 64, 65, just after the semi-final of the European Cup. The compassion Shankly shows you in that meeting, that you would see you leave the Reds for the very last time. Although the heartbreak is raw, his words of comfort is not what you saw a lot of the great man. You see how much he thought of you, and I've got your book here, and the quote, and to think this on the spot to yourself is, so remember this: you were one of the first players to come here to sign for me. So I want you to think of yourself like the foundation stone of the Liverpool Cathedral. Nobody ever sees it, but it has to be there. Otherwise, the cathedral doesn't get built.
That's virtually word for word what he said.
Oh my God! The back of my hairs on the back of me.
I didn't understand what he was saying at the time.
Yeah,
I didn't. I was away with. I was so upset that I was leaving after 5 years and trying my best to do what I wanted to do to be in that big team, and I wasn't listening properly. Maybe at the time, it was only when I was listening properly, but it was quite a profound statement. But when I think about it, I know what he meant now. I know he meant that everybody's important in a team, in a club, even though you don't become like a Robbie Fowler or a Michael Owen, you're still there as part of that structure in the club, and you should be proud of it. And I think that's what he meant, without doubt. Because he called me the 12th best player in the world. That was ridiculous. I mean, that was a nonsense, But you did actually tell Dave Russell, the manager of Tranmere, when I signed for them, I was the best player ever to play in his reserve team.
yeah.
That was praise indeed, wasn't it? So I might accept that.
That's massive praise, because as we all know, there's only ever 2 teams in Liverpool, and if Everton was down at the bottom of his garden and shut his curtains, so
yeah.
Just a quick one as well, George. There'll be a lot of people listening who have family members who are in academies. I know I've got a godson who's had trials and is getting a few tribulations along the way, such as one the other week against Crewe, where he turned up for the trial and sadly he didn't get picked. Is there
funnily enough, though, Kev, like on that topic as well, my nephew actually got picked for our local academy as well, and he's 5 years old. Which, I think he's 6. He's 6 years old, and that, to me, getting picked at an academy is mental at 6 years old. So I know we're going with the question. So sorry, I just wanted to say,
it's all right. No,
everybody, even my nephew 6 is getting picked for these academy professional footballers.
And it's something that, from the best number 12 of Liverpool, is there any kind of advice you'd give these young players who are having these trials and how to overcome some of the tribulations to some degree?
Well, I think first and foremost, if you're going to make the grade as a professional footballer, it's very competitive, always has been, even more so now because the money is so big. There's so many people want to get there, and there's such a lot of obstacles to overcome. First thing you need is talent, I think. First thing you need talent. You need to be a footballer. But it's not enough. You need to have spirit, determination, get back up when you're knocked down. Don't give in. Believe in yourself. Because these are the qualities that breed people like Gerrard. First of all, he's got the talent. Secondly, and also you've got to take your chance when your chance comes. And I can relate to that because when I came back from South Africa, I had 45 minutes to change my life at Tranmere. Might sound a big thing, but me and my wife came back from South Africa with a 4-month-old baby. Apartheid was on in South Africa. I'd been attacked by somebody in the apartment with a knife. My wife didn't want to go back, but I would have had to go back because they retained my registration other than the UK. So I couldn't play anywhere else in the world apart from the UK. I would have had to go back to South Africa. And I was picked to play in the first team against Derby County by Dave Russell. On my very first game, he didn't even hardly knew who I was. It was only on Shankly's recommendation. And we're playing against Derby County, and they had Hector Hinton O'Hare, Archie Gemmell, Dave Mackay, captain of Scotland, Peter Shilton, Clough was the manager. And I'm out there playing for Tranmere. I knew I'd got 45 minutes to get back in the UK. And boy, I took my chance. I nutmegged Dave Mackay. I was spraying the ball about all over the place. I had a wonderful game. But I knew I could only last 45 minutes because South Africa, like Australia, is the other side of the equation. So you're in the football season there, cricket season here. So I knew I would probably run out of steam. So I'd give everything in that 45 minutes. Well, at halftime, Norman Wilson, the secretary, came in with I've still got the contract here. It means so much to me. And Football League contract, 2-year contract, first team wages. Halftime. We were 0-0 then. We lost 2-0.
Yeah.
And I played okay second half, but I ran out of steam a bit. But they were happy with what they saw. Now that cements in my mind that if you get a chance, sometimes you've got to just do everything to take it, you know. It was the same later on, and you probably read in the book about when I got my first job. You know, you've got to, you get a chance, and if you take it, you're on your way. But as far as you say, everybody can't be a superstar. You've got to get to your level. If your lad's in an academy, or your girl, your daughter's in an academy, they'll know the level they're at. And I think don't build up too much expectations to be knocked down. Take it easy. Work hard. You've got to work hard and be noticed by the trainer. Do what you're told. Live good, eat good. You know, all that stuff.
But that live good, eat good stuff, George, though, is so important because you can have all the talent in the world, but talent is nothing unless it's recognised. And you know, we've seen that with so many footballers over the years that you think, oh, this guy is going to be like the best in the world. But if it's not recognised, and if you're not eating right, if you're not living right, that makes a massive difference. But we've also seen that on the flip side, especially at Liverpool Football Club, where actually effort is rewarded sometimes more than talent.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. But you look at likes of Salah, he's got the talent, but look how fit he is. Look how dedicated he is. He doesn't get there by luck. Without that fitness, his talent wouldn't be much good to him. No. Because when you get to 35, 36, 37, you've still got the talent, but your body won't obey the brain.
Yeah.
You know, you run out of steam. You still think you can do what you did at 21.
I mean, for me, like, I remember always looking at Dirk Kuyt, and who was brought in for Liverpool to be a forward and to be a goal scorer. And then he found himself on the right wing because he was such a workhorse. And for me, looking at maybe an 18-year-old, I was like, well, this lad was like brought in to score goals. What's he doing on the right wing? And I was like, I immediately felt endeared by him because he worked so hard and he was just so committed to the cause and he just wanted to prove himself. And I see that now with even Darwin Núñez, you know, and Cody Gakpo. And I see that they actually work for the team. And that, for me, is the Liverpool way of, okay, fine. These are maybe some limitations that you've not quite reached yet. But actually, for me, your effort that you're putting in over 90 minutes is far more superior than what the talent you could put in for 10 minutes. Also, today, you can still make a lot of money, even if you don't make the Liverpool first team. You can still make a lot of money in a big career at other clubs. I mean, if you've got the ability and you're recognised by the coaches, yes, you might not get into the Liverpool team because very few people do. Let's be honest. How many have you got from the academy? Curtis Jones, Jamie Carragher, Steve Gerrard, Morton, Tyler Morton, maybe Ben Doak. You know, we're talking half. Shetic maybe as well coming in and.
Yes, of course, definitely. Very talented. So maybe a dozen over the course of the last, 15, 20 years. Just made the big time. So it's not an easy place to get into really these days, but you can still have a great career if you're talented and you find, another way.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're looking at probably, I think I've seen something, it's something like less than 1% of academy players actually make it at the club. But I as you say though, it's these people who have the talent, and because they get very deflated because it's the club that they loved, they don't tend to take that talent further on. It's staggering in a way that a lot of footballers are lost because of that. And it's getting back up on the horse again, isn't it? It's about taking that chance. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because everything you believed in, everything you want is there for you, and if it's snatched away, it takes a while to recover. It really does. I mean, it's. I feel so sorry for the lads that get released because it must be an absolute. And you can see why some footballers get into a bit of depression and that, because things are not going right and you can go down the wrong road. So you've got to stick to your guns, really.
But it goes back to what you were saying before. In your time, is the fact that some of these players leave without an education as well. You know what I mean? So there's nothing there to fall back on.
Yeah.
That may not necessarily may be the case now because there's probably things in place. But Jordan, you're in it. Unless you've got something to fall back on, you're then looking and searching, aren't you?
Yeah, well, they tried to give us an education. They told my mum and the other boys' parents were told, we'll look after them, we'll give you an education. And they sent us to Chilwell County College 2 nights a week. But really, we weren't really interested. Our hearts were at Anfield playing football. We weren't going to sit in a classroom at 16. We should have done, but, it was never going to produce a future, really. At that time in our lives, because there was so many other things with the football going on. That's where our heart lay.
Yeah, definitely.
The only two guys had an education I can remember is Steve Highway and Brian Hall.
Yeah,
because they were both the Bachelor of Science.
Yeah, he came in with degrees, didn't he? And he
Yeah.
came in for the semi-final against Everton at Old Trafford, was he? And I think one of them scored as well. I think on the day. If I may be wrong with it.
Bamba Gascoigne used to have a university challenge, and they called them Little Bamba and Big Bamba.
The way in the world, though, I'm very pleased to say, as I say, I am involved in a professional football club and the education around it. Within my role of teaching, and all professional football clubs who sign young players, they do have to and keep repeating their GCSEs in English and maths.
That's right. That's how it's much better now.
So, they do provide that. And so many people have done well, like yourself, George, in business. So many people have done well outside of the life of football, but so many people haven't as well. So there has to be a responsibility, I think, not just within education, but there has to be a responsibility within football clubs to make sure that we are looking after everybody else who doesn't make it, because there has to be a life outside that. Because as Kev quite rightly said, so many academy players don't make it. There has to be some sort of backup plan, and now there is. And it might be heartbreaking for so many people who don't make it, but I'm personally pleased, being in the educational sector myself, that we can provide that. I just want to ask a couple of questions, and Kev, I'm going to ask you to think of a couple of quick fire questions as well. These are not scripted, and actually, George, you didn't even get a script tonight because I was ill in the week, so I didn't even send one over. So these are all off the cuff, as tonight always has been. Could you describe Bill Shankly in 5 words?
Oh,
it's tough, I know. 5. I was going to say 3, but I was like, nah, you can't do that in 3.
Oh, charismatic, special, leader, a mentor, and I got 2 words. Well, it's more than 2 words. Best football man that ever lived.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, I always say that as well. There's no Liverpool Football Club without him, and that's what makes him the best manager. 5-a-side of all time.
Say that again.
The best Liverpool 5-a-side of all time.
The best Liverpool. I didn't catch the word. It broke up. 5-a-side.
Yeah.
5-a-side, yeah, of all time. Yeah.
The best Liverpool 5-a-side team.
Yeah, go on.
Oh my God. Yeah, me.
So I put George on the spot.
Gerrard.
And I'm going to ask you in a minute, Kev. So come on, think.
Steve Gerrard.
Okay.
Kenny Dalglish.
Yeah.
Mo Salah.
Yeah.
Ian Rush. And so many, God.
You need a goal. You need a goal in unless Gerrard's going Rush.
The goalkeeper, Allison,
yeah. Kev, who's yours, Kev?
Oh, come on. You can't be doing this to me. Right, okay. I am going to go Clements in goal.
Okay.
Yeah, good show.
I'm going to go Tommy Smith as my defender.
Yeah. He was my minder.
I can imagine.
He'd have a word. I played 50 games with him in the reserves, Tommy. And eventually came near me. I'll tell you a story about that for the FA Youth Cup final in a minute.
Yeah, sad. I then go. Oh, here do I go? I go Barnes. I will go. Who else? I'll go Barnes, Beardsley, and I'll go Dalglish.
Yeah, you're going in your own era there, aren't you?
Well, I had to get some in your ear as well, George. You know what I mean? There's no point doing a podcast with you and picking everyone in
I tried to step out of my era, more modern era for the viewers, the young lads.
Who's yours, Rich? You're not getting out of this quite.
That's all right. That's all right. When I was scribbling notes when I was trying to compare. So I'll go Ali. It is very tough between Ali and Ray, isn't it? It's very tough. I think you need a solid centre back. So I'm going Alan Hansen at centre back. I think he's a tough cookie. I think he can hold down the midfield well, while Gerrard flips between that 6 and 8 position, allowing Kenny then to flip between the 8 and 10 position, and Mo Salah's got to be up top for me.
Yeah,
so,
they're all great players.
Yeah, there we go. So yeah, I mean, you know, Kev, you can offer the quick fire questions as well, but
your boys' club up in Aberdeen produced a few okay lads, such as Ron Yates and Dennis Law. Were you ever lucky enough to what? I know they were older than you, but did you get an opportunity to see them play at all while they were while they were up there and playing for the for the boys' club?
Sadly, I didn't, because, as you say, they were a bit older than me. You know, I mean, about 4 years older, maybe. I became quite friendly with Dennis, actually, to be honest. You know, I mean, across his path quite a number of times, and I knew him from Aberdeen, and his brother Joey as well. And he was, when he played for Aberdeen schoolboys. In fact, funny enough, I broke his record playing for Aberdeen schoolboys. I played for Aberdeen boys more times than Dennis, maybe because he left quicker than me, go down to Huddersfield, and I played a little longer. But never mind. You know, so Ronnie went to Dundee United first, and then Shankly signed him from Dundee. He used to work as a cattle mart, you know, amazing. And Dennis, of course, was always amazing. I used to copy him when I played. I had my shirt cuffs held in my fingers and a shirt out the front of my pants, you know, with a dirt on the leg. You know, everybody else had an idol, and he was mine. It's a funny story. I think it's in the book as well, that I met him down at the golf centre, NEC, with one of my salespeople. And he was with the John Latter's golf company doing a promo. And he saw me and he came over, and I introduced him to my colleague, you know. I said, Nicky, this is Dennis Law. You don't have to tell me, I know who it is, you know. And Dennis, I should have told you the first story before I tell you this one, actually. What had actually happened is Shankly took me across to meet Dennis at Goodison Park. I was only 16, maybe turning 16. And he knew he's my idol, you know. And I'm taking you to see Dennis Law tonight, son. You'll never forget tonight, all this stuff. I get over there. He goes into the Goodison dressing room, the away dressing room. City's beat Everton 1-0. Pulls Dennis out. Dennis comes out covered in mud. Looks at me, goes, yeah. And Shankly says, I've got a boy here from Aberdeen, Dennis. It's going to be better than you, son. And Dennis says, you just tend to exaggerate, you know. And then years later, at this golf thing, Dennis comes over. I introduce him to my pal, you know. And Dennis looks at me and said, do you know, he says, your boss, Shankly, told him once he's going to be better than me. He meant as a salesman, not a footballer.
That's great. That is absolutely superb. My last question to you would be, in this quick fire round, would be, if you would say have your time again at Liverpool, what era would you say you'd have your best chance and opportunity to get your start?
I would say today. Today, without a doubt.
Because you're a workhorse.
Out of all them substitutes, I had a lot of, it sounds terrible to say, but I did have a lot of talent. I did have a lot of ability. I did score a lot of goals from midfield. And maybe it wasn't as big as I should have been. I mean, I was probably 5'6".
Yeah.
You know, I could have done with another couple of inches on the old head, you know. I did have hair then. But nonetheless, I could have done with a little bit taller, you know, I think, to be honest. But then again, the great players, you know, Michael Owen, Messi, all these guys, you know, not comparing myself with him, but height-wise, Maradona, they were all small guys, you know. So, you know, I think today, because the pitches are great, would have suited me. You know, and 18, 20 people in the squad, you know, would have had a good chance of getting in, I think. I mean, the one thing that was a bit of a shame, really, was after that cup final and after that Milan game. Well, just before the cup final, we played Wolves at Molineux, and Shankly played virtually a reserve team, like a weekend team. And there's a couple of lads in that team who'd only played about 4 or 5 games in the reserves, and they beat Wolves 3-1. And I didn't play; he didn't pick me, and I was devastated. But the reason he didn't pick me was, and he did tell me, he said he promised Eddie Turnbull, the manager of Aberdeen, who had paid £12,000 for me, which was a lot of money for a reserve.
It was definitely, yeah.
He said I couldn't play. He wouldn't let me play. Whether that was true or not, I don't know. That's the excuse he gave. But I would have wanted to play in that game, even if it was my last game, because just to have that feeling of being in the big team, and also I think I might have scored a couple of goals.
Yeah.
There's a lad called John Seeley, lovely lad, John. I'm seeing him next month. It's one of the reunions we're having. And John scored, and he only started his career in the reserves, played about 6 games, I think. But he got his one game in the first team, and his name's at Melwood on that sheet. One first team appearance, John Seeley. My name's nowhere to be seen. So there you go. That's just the way the cookie crumbles, and you've got to just accept it and get on with it, you know.
George, what are you looking forward to for Liverpool in the next season? Because there seems to be, quite rightly so, renewed optimism, I think, amongst the fan base. Kev and I are always optimistic, even like seasons gone by where,
see that, yeah.
you know, the doldrums are perhaps playing and, you know, the funeral bells are singing. Kevin and I have always tried to be the most positive in our fan base. But what do you think this season?
Well, I'm really optimistic of this season. I go on a podcast with Frank Carlisle quite a lot, you know, and we've actually 3 or 4 months ago it was gloom and doom. Who we're going to sign? All this stuff with the lad from Southampton, Lavia and Caicedo.
Yeah, sure, yeah, Caicedo.
On and on and on and on and on. And I thought, oh no, what's going to happen here? And look what happened. Caicedo's gone to Chelsea, gave away a goal in his first appearance, got injured. Lavia's not even in the squad. So we've got McAllister and we've got Szoboszlai, and we've got Curtis coming on to a really good game after the last 10 games of last season, where he got game time, proving himself now. So he's a big player for us now. Harvey Elliott's coming through and really impressive in the last few games. Harvey, he's a workhorse, and when he came on as substitute, he lifted the mood, I felt, the last few games. So, you know, I'm very optimistic. I think I'll be very, very surprised if we're not in the top 4. And I think we'll be fighting for the title. But we've got to keep it tight at the back. I think that's been our problem. Losing goals, and especially early goals. I think our forwards will always score. We've got so much pace and talent up front. Jota, Diaz, Salah, Nunes. And the midfield is looking strong now as well. And that bench the other day was probably better than the team they put out.
It was. I don't know if you agree, George, but I think Elliot is one of the favourite quotes from Bill Shankly. He's got the enthusiasm, and that enthusiasm with him, you can see he doesn't get deflated at any point. He absolutely comes on and he gives his all, and he just wants to play with that shirt. And I just think that he would probably mirror what you would have been like, George, if you were given the opportunity. You'd give it your all every time you come on. Yeah,
I'm not putting myself in his category, but I was a similar player. That was my style. That was my style. Although I did have a right foot. Yeah. I didn't have a left foot. No, but I mean, I'm very optimistic to answer your question. You know, I mean, to be honest as well, we've got the mark on City. We've beat them more times than they beat us. And in the big games, we've beat them. So, you know, I mean, they've got a few problems at the moment with injuries as well. De Bruyne is out at the moment, but they're a massive team. It'll take some stopping. But I think Liverpool's the team to stop them. Liverpool, Arsenal, Man City. That's about it. I don't think Spurs will last the course. I don't think Newcastle will last the course.
Do you know what though? With Spurs, I've actually felt quite refreshed with Ange. Like, you know, seeing some of his interviews, and he has a bit of Jurgen about him. Like, he does feel like a bit of a socialist manager. And I saw an amazing interview. I don't know if you guys caught it, and I'm sure that, you know, people did, where they, you know, they obviously, like, you know, they go on tour and they ask certain fans questions, and whoever was the host was winding down and said, okay, and that's enough for today. And actually, I saw it on Twitter, And I was just, no, there's one person actually over there who needs to ask a question. It was Down syndrome person.
Yes, I've seen that. It was
yeah,
brilliant.
it was phenomenal. And like,
Fantastic,
for me, and for me, like little tiny things like that makes me think, do you know what? I really hope Spurs do well this year.
You're right, actually. You're right, because I mean, he looks as if he did well at Celtic as well.
Yeah,
was it Celtic?
Yeah,
They loved him. They loved him up there.
Yeah.
So he could be another Klopp in the making. Yeah, that was a great gesture. I thought that was wonderful.
Yeah, and he said, "Do you know what?" He just went, "Actually, hang on, that lad over there," and pointing to him, said, "He's got the best question of the night."
In the world.
Yeah, that's it. And I was just
the kid was thrilled, and his parents were thrilled. Yeah,
that was it. And like, and for me, that's family, that's football, that's socialism, that is everything that Shankly stood for and what Jurgen stands for, and all of the the managers gone by who stand for as well. Because there's been so many great football managers. We shouldn't just put them just down to Liverpool, but we do.
It's so competitive at the top of the league, isn't it? You've got these 6 clubs now, and you've got to include United as well. They're struggling at the moment. United, Newcastle, now Brighton as well. Look at Brighton.
I know.
Brighton have come right through now, so it's another one that's going to be on our tail. Play them soon too. Next week, isn't it? The week after.
Yeah, something like that, George. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I'm very optimistic. I think we've got a good squad, a good team, a good atmosphere, and a fantastic crowd as always. And very few people will get anything at Anfield.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Kev, any final questions, Kev? Because I know you can go on for another hour.
I'll be honest, George. I'd have you here till tomorrow morning, and just speaking to you, because it is just great. Speaking to someone, especially of that era, and to have done, although you didn't achieve what we were expecting, but it's to be around that club. And right at the start, it's when you read your book, and I could actually close my eyes as you're walking through Anfield for that first time, the way you pictured it, and how you still remember. You probably even remember the smell that you smelled in certain areas as well when you're walking through. Honestly, it's so descriptive, so great to listen to, and to have that kind of memory and all like that. It's absolutely a wondrous. The question I'd like to ask you is, what was? Because I know it anyway. I think. What was your best goal for your hometown, Aberdeen, when you went back there?
Well,
what was the best goal you scored for them?
That was my debut goal. My debut goal when I got up there. Scored after 13 minutes. You remember all my life, I wanted to play for Aberdeen. I supported them as a boy.
Yeah.
With Pittodrie on the cup there, watched them playing when they won the league and everything. 40,000 at Pittodrie in the 50s when I was a kid, and right through until I left to go to Anfield. So it was nice to be able to go. Funny enough, I'll tell you a little story. I got a letter from Alex Ferguson. Now, I never expect a letter from Alex Ferguson. It came through my letterbox. And the reason it happened was I wrote an article for the Aberdeen Ex-Players magazine, which is called The Heavenly Dancers, and it goes to all these ex-players all over the world who play for Aberdeen. And there's some big players play for Aberdeen over the years. And I wrote this article about my time with Shankly, and he says, "Dear George, I'm normally very busy, but this week on Tuesday at the Cliff, this is Cliftonville, his training ground, I found myself with a bit of time on my hands, and I read The Heavenly Dancers from cover to cover. He says, your article about Bill Shankly was unbelievable in that you can remember so many things about this great man over such a long period of years. And it must have been so wonderful to play for such a fantastic club in such a fantastic city. Aberdeen, I mean, not Liverpool." Yours sincerely, Alex Ferguson, MB.
Brilliant.
My friend Alex Totten is a great friend of Fergie's, and he's a mentor for him. He's a big manager in Scotland, Alex. For many years, won the Manager of the Year 3 times, I think. And Fergie's a big pal of his, and he said Fergie is a really, really, really good mentor to him, like Bill Shankly was to me. So there you go.
I think honestly, there are, maybe before Jurgen and Pep, there are two great managers who would always go toe to toe, and it's always between Liverpool and Manchester United, isn't it? And those managers are Bill Shankly and Sir Alex Ferguson, who changed football, I personally think, forever. And it just so happens that they have so many similarities. And for me, the best modern day manager Premier League era, if you want to say, you know, from 1992 onwards, if football started then, is Sir Alex Ferguson, because no one can replicate. You know, no one can replicate that. Yeah, you know, but also no one had those resources that maybe Pep has now, or even Jurgen has now, or Eddie Howe has now. Sir Alex Ferguson did all of that, and he was a man manager as well as a coach. But that's what Shankly was too, you know, and the similarities run deep.
The most successful manager, of course, in a short period of time was Bob Paisley.
Bob Paisley's
the number of trophies Bob Paisley won in a short period of time was absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah.
And he was such a different character to Bill. They were complete opposites, you know, but they were just as successful, you know. I mean, it was a seamless transition when Bob took over, you know.
And more ruthless, more cutthroat with Bob as well. You know what I mean? It, you know, it was unbelievable. And his record, as you say, just speaks for itself. I don't think anything will get close to that, and it's a template along with Bill Shankly as to be a Liverpool manager.
Going back to the book, Kevin, I have to thank Jeff Goulding quite a lot, because Jeff's a talented writer, and I'd written the book. I'd written it over about 4 years, not in the way it came out, but in my own words.
Yeah.
And Jeff and I met up at the Shankly Hotel. And all I was going to do was give him some stories about Shankly. And after 10 minutes, he said, "No, it's not stories. This is a book." And that's when it started. So I sent him all my stuff over, and he sent a bit back. And so we didn't really meet much at all for about 3 or 4 or 5 months. But then he chose a title. He put the paragraphs, explained to me what a book is and how it should be written, and how the public or the reader needs to identify with the character, what happens to him or her, you know. And he's very talented. He's written 6 best-selling books about Liverpool. He's got one called The Untouchables, about the 1920-21 side that's won the championships 2 years in a row. And I actually knew the captain of that team. I played snooker with him, Ephraim Longworth. Yeah, he had 44 caps for England, and he captained the team in 1914 Cup final at the Crystal Palace. And he used to come to Anfield and play snooker with us. Me and Gordon and Bobby played him at pool. And he had Parkinson's disease by this time. He used to come in and sweep the passage and all that. And Shankly called him a living legend. He's number 44 in players that shook the cup. Look him up, Ephraim Longworth. And he used to come in with his left hand, snooker, his left hand would shake. Like, you know, I can't show it on here, but his hand's shaking. Would be playing for 10 pence or 2 bob, whatever it was. And as soon as it clipped the club, it'd stop and he'd pot the ball and win the money. You know, and he was an absolute wonderful character. And Jeff couldn't believe I knew this guy, you know, so we put that in the book as well. But the way we formatted the book, I think, what's been good about it is, at the time the book was published, I was undergoing a 5-way heart bypass. I was in Broad Green Hospital, and I must have got over 1,000 messages. It was unbelievable. And the book was published the 20th of September, 3 years ago, this week. And that lifted my spirits, because the reaction to the book gave me a bit more will to get through. And then 7 months after that, I found myself with double bacterial pneumonia. It's just 2 years ago. 2 years ago this week. So I had the 5-way heart bypass in September, 3 years ago. And then 2 years ago, I had this double bacterial pneumonia. And I was given 8 hours to live. And they brought my wife and 2 boys in to say goodbye. Told me I wasn't going to make it because my oxygen levels had gone so low, and I was in intensive care 5 weeks. And during that time, Bill Shankly's spirit helped me to get through, because I focused forward into what I wanted to do, and I wasn't going to let go. And he told me, the consultant who I'm still friends with, that called Jean-Pierre, still works at Arrow Park, head of intensive care. He said, the reason you survived is you never gave up. You kept breathing. And that mask is a horrible mask I had to breathe in. And they gave me a load of steroids the next day, and slowly turned it around. When I came out of hospital, I lost 24 pounds, couldn't walk the length of the living room, and I built up slowly from there. And now I'm playing golf 3 times a week, walking 10,000 steps a day, you know, and I'm as fit as I've ever been. So in my mind, everybody needs something to cling on to, and that was I just used to just think, you know, keep fighting, you know. It was a life lesson. And funny enough, you know, a year before that, I had cancer in my head. Look, you can probably see the hole.
Oh, no way.
I had a tumor taken out of my head, the squamous cell carcinoma.
George,
at the end of the day, life's for living, and you've got to just get on with it. You know, you've only got a certain time on this planet, so enjoy it.
The mad
You know
thing
what
is-
though, George?
My middle name's Lucky, by the way.
You know what, George? Though, like Bill would be so proud of all of that what you've just said, and you know everything that I've read about Shankly and everything that Kev has read about Shankly and everything has read about Shankly is literally just don't stop fighting and don't give up.
Yeah.
And that philosophy has to stand true in life. Is like, oh, life might hand you an absolute mare. Keep moving forward, and whatever it does, keep moving forwards. And I think, you know, you have said that you had Bill's, you know, whatever in your mind, whether it's his words or his wisdom or even just his spirit. That's such an important message, I think, to everyone who's listening. Is like, no matter what, do you know what? I'm going to swear, life is shit and life is hard.
It's true for so many people.
Keep walking through those walls and keep bounding down those walls, because there is a good rainbow smashing past that, smashing past that rain. And without being cynical at all, like, there is light at the end of the tunnel. And
at the end of the storm, there's a golden sky. That's in the song, isn't it?
Yeah,
definitely.
And I just genuinely think that is what Shankly stood for, and that's what Liverpool stand for as well.
Absolutely, 100%. Totally agree with you, Cam. Absolutely. And long may it continue.
The thing about before our admin sent us a picture of you when you were in hospital, George. I think you sent us through some of that thing that was around your head. I didn't read the messages beforehand, so I'm in work and I'm thinking, oh my God, what has happened to George? Is tonight cancelled? Because I was like, you were. I was either thinking you're going to space or go, oh my God, what the hell's happened? So I'm in work, I'm virtually on the edge of tears, and I'm thinking, my like this is like Christmas Day to me, being able to speak to yourself, George. So I was virtually devastated until I read above, and I went, oh my God, I've just nearly bottled one here. I just thought we weren't going to do it.
It was 2 years ago.
Yeah,
you said I looked like Buzz Lightyear.
Oh, but you know what
wasn't
you came,
it wasn't nice.
And it doesn't look like that. But you know the fact that you're here, and I will ask, how is your golf at the moment? How's your round doing?
Oh, brilliant! I play off 15. Not a bad handicap for me. Yeah. I play to it. Yeah, I'm playing quite well. Finished fourth in the medal 2 weeks ago at the club. I was captain of Barometer Golf Club in 2009, so I've been a member there about 30 odd years. Still about 4 miles from where I live. I love my golf because it's the reason I like golf. Shankly didn't like golf. He said we should never play golf. He said it made plodders, one-pace players. Never play golf.
Of course he did. Yeah, I bet he did.
Now, at my age now, you see, what golf gives you is competition. You're competing. You're having banter in the dressing room with your mates. You're going on trips and all that. So it's like being in a football dressing room, and it's got competition and it's got friendlies, and it's everything you need as an ex-footballer to keep you active. And I'm retired. I've been retired 20 years, so I've got to find something to do. My grandchildren are getting taller than me now. They're all above me. So it keeps me active. And the book's been great.
Yeah, it's a camaraderie as well, and it's good fun in the clubhouse. And for me though, on a bad day, it does ruin a good walk. That's the only downside on a bad day, perhaps as well. So, listen, George, we are going to wind down now because it's been absolutely phenomenal, and I can only thank you from the absolute bottom of my heart, because you've been absolutely such a fantastic guest, and you've given us such an amazing insight. Kev, would you like to give any few words?
No, I just want to just reiterate what Ritchie said. I just want to thank you for your time, and a pleasure it was to read your book from cover to cover, and I'd fully recommend it to anyone to read, to take you back to those glorious days and how it all started. There you go. I've got it here as well.
I've got it. Mine's on the case back there.
Yeah, it's amazing, really. It's 3 years. It's 3 years since it was published, and about a month ago, it was still number 2 in Amazon LFC books. It's gone down a bit now. It goes up and down. It's very rarely out the top 100. But when it was first published, it was up there all the time. There's another great book, by the way, I should just let you know about, Marios Mantsos. He's a Greek lad, and he's written a book called The Special One, The Social One, The Social One. It's about Jurgen Klopp. That's flying quite high in the Liverpool FC charts as well. That's a good book about Jurgen.
Okay.
Anyway, it's a joy to speak to you, boys. Thanks for inviting me along. I really have enjoyed it. Thank you.
No, it's been an absolute honour and a pleasure as well. So thank you so much. And to everyone else who's listened and has caught us for the next hour and 35 minutes, thank you so much for listening as always. And, you know, for these guest shows, it's always something really special. So thank you so much. I hope you took as much insight as what we did as well. So thank you to George. Thank you to Kev.